Thanks for joining us. It's Thursday, the 23rd of April. This is the live show from Travel Massive, hosted from here in Dublin, but also today from South Africa. It's produced by Maria Stoyanova in Bulgaria and with the help of Ian today in Tasmania. Thank you for joining us. This is the live show, episode 8. This is the Travel Massive community's way of coming together during the COVID-19 crisis. We share stories that are generally positive to help us understand how others are spending the time. And today we're talking specifically, like we've spoken about hospitality, we've spoken about aviation. This week we're talking a little bit about the view from South Africa. So there's an awful lot that I know, there's more that I don't know, and today we've got some great guests joining us to share their stories about how their businesses are doing, what they're up to at the moment, and how they expect the recovery to go. My guests today are Phaka Hlazo from Zulu Nomad. I've got Sharon Gilbert-Rivett from the Safari Collective, followed by Stephan Ekbergh of Travelstart. I'm really looking forward to these conversations. I've had an awful lot of fun getting ready for this, so I'm absolutely dying to introduce our first guest today. Phaka, will you please unmute yourself and get ready for the limelight? I'd love to have a quick chat to you. Today, Phaka, you're joining us from isolation, but you started your current travel career with Zulu Nomads out of an Instagram account that got a little bit out of hand. Can you tell us a little bit of your story about how you started Zulu Nomad, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, first of all, and thank you so much for Travel Massive, Ian, Maria, and the team for affording us this opportunity to just connect to the rest of the community in the rest of the world. So Zulu Nomad started off with as an Instagram page because at the time I was actually living in Shanghai. And I was having such a great time. I figured, oh man, I'm going to do 3 years here and then 3 years in South America. And then maybe after that, 3 years in West Africa. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to be a nomad. I was like, I'm going to be the Zulu Nomad. I started an Instagram page. Needless to say, I never made it to South America. Well, I have made it to West Africa. It's North Africa that I haven't made it to yet. But what happened was that upon my return to South Africa, then actually identified a gap in the market in terms of local travel, in terms of overland travel by South Africans into the rest of the continent. And yeah, the rest is history.
Can you help? I admit I'm asking for myself as well. I'm just completely curious. I know very little about how the industry and in the continent itself is structured, but maybe just talk about South Africa, because to the outsider, there's some big towns, people fly around. The inbound market, it's got to be more than just Safari and Kruger Park. Can you tell
Absolutely.
me a little bit about how people move, what happens there? Give me a shape of the South
So
African
much
industry.
more. So with the inbound market, we found that a lot of the guys coming through from other countries will obviously be wanting to come on safari, or they'll be coming in to volunteer in many reservations or communities around reservations. Or you also get, obviously Cape Town is a very big deal. And then you've got, younger travelers who've discovered Johannesburg as well, which is another capital city in the country. And so Cape Town, Joburg, safaris, volunteering, that's usually where the inbound market sort of goes. But we have a super vibrant domestic industry in South Africa, which has over the past couple of years been dominated by young tour operators, mostly guys who are straight from school and who enjoy traveling themselves. And they're taking young people and people who haven't necessarily been exposed to travel before around the country. And so South Africa is stunning. We've got beautiful coastlines, we've got beautiful mountains, we've got amazing beaches that are warm and you can swim in year round away from the sharks. Or if you want the
Is
shark
is
experience, sure,
surf
go
a thing
ahead.
for you guys? You've got a huge amount of coast, and I gotta admit there must be a huge amount of waves there. Is this a
Yeah.
big scene in South Africa?
Absolutely. Lots of surfing in South Africa on the East Coast. Durban is a big surfing town. East London is a big surfing town as well. South Africa is really a country that if you want to travel and experience authentically, you probably want to hire a car and actually just drive around for days on end. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a couple of Idiot's Guide questions just to help us all get our sense of geography, but I do want to fuss a little bit about the domestic market a little bit more, because the inbound thing, it's like, okay, well, how would Durban compete with Amsterdam? But I'm more curious about what do people do for a weekend? You know, if you're living in Johannesburg, you know, obviously, hopefully not in lockdown, but what do you do to just blow out the cobwebs? How do you escape?
Yeah, we've got amazing hikes. So there's a big hiking culture, big outdoor culture, big camping culture. We've got amazing festivals, music festivals. There's live music, you know, in any sort of town in South Africa, you'll find a bar or a restaurant that has live music. There's a lot of shopping. I think you guys would probably know there's a lot of color in the African spirit. And so whether it's our food, whether it's our shopping, whether it's our markets, our fashion, these are all sort of experiences that people engage in and enjoy on weekends. So outside of I'm going to get on a plane and sort of go to Cape Town for the weekend.
Okay, but like, so if you're going to go across the country, if you're going to check out another part of the country, what drives you there? It's not the shopping, is it? You know, is that what will bring somebody from Durban all the way back to Cape Town?
Can I be honest? In the past couple of years, what drives you there is probably Instagram. I think
okay.
I think Instagram has probably done wonders for the domestic tourism industry, as well as, you know, so our neighboring countries, your Mozambique, Lesotho, destinations that countries that were not necessarily considered destinations by South Africans before, whether it was an access thing, maybe we weren't earning as much money as we are now, or we just didn't know, you know. So what Instagram has done is brought to the fore so many really iconic and beautiful destinations that were probably neglected, people didn't know about, people thought were inaccessible. When you see someone else there, you know you can get there and you can give it a try.
Is that the main source of inspiration? So for domestic travel, it's Instagram, or, you know, do you need an OTA to travel domestically? Is this something that people just manage directly? You know, what is the channel locally? Like, what do people?
So the OTA landscape as an operator myself is a very interesting one as an African operator, because everywhere else in the world, the technology and the use of technology in your business is so ingrained, or has had a bit of a runway. Whereas in the South African context, especially domestically, it's probably more social media engagement. It is engaging with your customers, Facebook, Instagram. WhatsApp is very popular actually for doing business and engaging and asking about tours and things like that. A lot of operators are not going to be on any of the OTAs at the moment.
Talk a little bit more about Zulu Nomad just for a second, because look, it's a crisis for everyone. I assume you're not immune to this.
Absolutely.
To ask the Kennedy question, where were you when you realized that this had hit? What was it like on your side?
Honestly, my heart sank. I was in a WhatsApp group with Ian and the rest of the Travel Massive crew that was preparing for the Berlin Travel Festival. And again, I mean, I'm a South African tour operator, not earning foreign currency. And so for me to be paying for flights to go to Berlin and accommodation and all of these things, you've actually incurred a lot of costs as a small business that is bootstrapping and has been bootstrapping for years and years. And so it was a really very difficult thing after all of that investment, where we had identified an opportunity to showcase Zulu Nomad and authentic immersive experiences in Africa to travelers in Europe. You know, Travel Massive for us, that was such a huge platform and a big part of our plan for the year in terms of launching the marketplace of African experiences, etc. And so COVID-19 definitely impacted us very, very negatively. But after the initial sort of shock, I think it probably took about 5 days, we were able to then dust ourselves. up and sort of reflect what is it that we can do now. And we went straight into solutioning mode, again, driven by just the nature of the country that we're in. I'm speaking from a position of privilege, from being able to have access to the internet and Wi-Fi, and be able to run my business and still have conversations and tap into advice from other entrepreneurs globally. But that's really a privilege that a lot of operators on the ground don't have. A lot of tour guides on the ground don't have. And so we've been looking at how do we become helpful in this situation to the rest of the South African community.
I'm going to press you on that in just a second. If you've just joined us, you're watching the live show from Travel Massive. We're broadcasting live on Zoom. That's how we're broadcasting, at least for today. We've got the stream going out live on Facebook. You'll be able to catch this offline through YouTube and on the Travel Massive podcast. If you have a question that you'd like to bring to Phaka, to Sharon, or to Stephan eventually, hit us up. We're over here on Zoom. That's where you can chat. Your questions will come to Maria and then to me if they're something that fits with the conversation. So head on up to travelmassive.com to find all the details about how to join us on Zoom. Phaka, back to this. Is this not the main way that people experience the travel internet then? Is it, you talk about, micro entrepreneurs not having the same kind of access that you do. And are you talking about a laptop? Like, is the travel internet not just something that's mobile for you guys? Can you share a little bit about the color of that for me, please?
So right now I'm sitting in my house in Johannesburg. I have fiber connectivity.
Wow, okay.
My tour guides that I work with on some of our tours are probably not sitting in the part of Johannesburg where I am, where they will have fiber connectivity. They're probably having to buy what we call data. It's a data plan, right? That you load onto your phone. And unfortunately, data in South Africa is still quite pricey. I know that just before the lockdown, we did have some of the major networks announce reductions in the cost of data. So that will be making a difference to our operators. But if you are a business owner, you're not getting any income, and then you still need to be on the internet to be able to get any kind of assistance, it becomes very, very challenging.
It's something that you said you've started to look at more from a diversification perspective. You've come from Instagram. You were born. Your current business was born there. It's grown. It mushrooms.
Absolutely.
You're talking digital solutions for SMEs. How does that work? What are you doing to help these guys? Because it'll help me understand a little bit how help us all hopefully understand a little bit how the market is structured from an operations perspective. There's a lot of tour guides, there's a lot of people with ideas. Can you bridge those two topics for me, please?
So the tour guides, so you have tour guides, you have tour operators, you have hosts who have not necessarily had any kind of formal business training. And so what we're doing at the moment is to say to everybody, guys, this is actually an opportunity for yourself as a business owner to upskill yourself, see where the gaps are in your business so far, and use this time to actually get the skills to plug in the gaps. And based on scenario planning, again, that we coach them through, whether that we recover in the next sort of 3 months in the short term, or 6 months or 12 months, what does your business look like in that case? And all of this, we have developed an online training course. I know I was speaking just now about people not being able to access resources online. However, again, because we understand that challenge, we are planning for it. And so right now we are just trying to see how we assist people who are in much worse positions than we are. And there actually is a lot that we can do. There's a lot of online tools that we know how to access and use. I'll give you an example with a very quick tutorial we'll be doing this week, which is going to be how to apply for the Tourism Relief Fund. Because the government sure has issued out the Tourism Relief Fund, but if you don't know how to apply for it, then you're not going to be able to access it, and it's pointless. And that is one of the immediate challenges of micro and small SMEs at the moment.
When it comes to the small guy can adapt faster. they can maybe spot the opportunity. You bridge the gap then in terms of skills to get the idea online. A lot of the market you were saying is still very much offline, both because it's not connected and there isn't maybe the same kind of online consumption, online engagement. How do you accelerate that? I mean, is it a case of if we could just get everybody to put up a great Facebook page, we'd accelerate the industry itself, we'd accelerate entrepreneurship itself? What would it take to make more business happen? Because opportunity, you can always smell it, and a good entrepreneur doesn't need a business degree, you know, and you're bridging that from a marketing perspective. How quickly can we get people online, and what's missing to get that done?
I think within the South African context, it's really an education process. It's a what value is there in you as a business owner being online? And I mean, these are conversations that I know that a lot of operators or associations globally take for granted, but that's where we need to be starting to have the conversation in the South African context with the target group that I'm speaking about right now. It is, what is the value of being online? What do I do when I'm online? Because once you're able to show value to an entrepreneur, they will be taking up those services or products that are available to them to assist.
Look, you've given me an awful lot of inspiration, both in our call just before and here. There is a domestic market. It's not all about the giraffes, okay? So it's not. Sorry, they're amazing, they're wonderful, but there's a lot more in the country to see. You're an awfully long way away from the rest of the world, though. You know, how do you see the international recovery, or is international part of the recovery for South Africa, or is it largely a domestic recovery for you guys?
I think at this point, we're absolutely planning on a domestic recovery much sooner than an international one. If we listen to interviews, for example, there was an interview with Bill Gates and Trevor Noah, where Bill Gates is sort of giving an overall view, and I think he's someone that we will, trust with his opinion. But from that interview, you sort of get the sense that the United States, which is one of the top 3 inbound markets for South Africa at the moment, those guys are not going to be recovering, anytime soon. The UK is probably not going to be recovering anytime soon. Those are the top 2 big markets for South Africa. And so even as we are advising and working with small business owners, we are definitely focusing on the domestic market and that recovery.
I know I mentioned this earlier, and you mentioned Durban. Can you compare somebody that hasn't been to Durban, what the vibe is like? Say if you know Amsterdam or
Durban is Barcelona. Durban is Barcelona. So.
Okay. Like the feeling I get there, it's like Paris 20 years ago. That's my feeling in Barcelona. Okay, so I get.
Oh no. I guess. Oh, that's interesting. Your perception as someone from Ireland of Barcelona is different to mine as someone from Durban.
There you go.
But the rest of Europe really seems very old and frigid and cold. And then you go to Barcelona and you lie on the beach and it's just stunning. That's Durban. Durban is a beautiful, laid-back culture, warm beaches, amazing people, and it's the best of both because we do have safaris. So the safari thing it's a product within the tourism industry. South Africans also go on safaris, but like you're saying, there's just so much more that you can do. Definitely, please go to Durban if you are planning a trip to South Africa.
It's on my bucket list already. One last question, maybe, Pack, if you don't mind. When you're a local and you're internally mobile and you're getting around, now it doesn't matter how you're getting around or why you're getting around. You could be just on a long range bus, you could be on a low cost flight, however you get there. I get the sense that culture is the main product. Like there's different cultures to sample around South Africa, and that's what the domestic market is about. Can you talk a little bit about how you start communicating that, and what that's like for a South African to get a sense of another part of the country?
So South Africa is an incredibly diverse country. We have 11 official languages. We have 9 different provinces with different peoples concentrated in different parts of the country. And so as a Zulu person, I am typically from the east coast of the country. And as I go further down the coast, then I come across the Xhosa people, and their traditional outfits are different. Their language is a little bit different to mine because it's still part of the same family of languages. But it's a very, very visually distinctive country.
Okay, so just paint me an itinerary for a weekend here. I'm Zulu. I'm heading down to Xhosa. What a strange thing to say. What am I doing? Like, what's my weekend looking like?
Okay,
is it banter in a pub? Is it the theater? Is it a street festival? What makes the memory for me?
Fresh air and mountains and ocean views while you're on a hike, and going into a family home and experiencing what their life is like, how they make their traditional beer versus how you would make it at home. It genuinely is about connecting with the people and connecting with the place, and creating memories.
I get a sense that there's quite a, there's something there that I haven't heard about. There's something that I have to learn, and I hope you're very busy telling the world about it, Phaka. Just to be honest. I think there's a lot of hard work to do to, let's leave the giraffes where they are. It's okay.
Exactly.
They should be the star of the show. But, let's get the other message out about the Amsterdam or the Barcelona of the continent. Let's all get to Durban. Okay. I'm going to come back to you towards the end of the show again, but for now, I'm going to try and get Stephan Ekbergh on the line. We have video to switch on, Stephan, if you could. I want to just do a quick little introduction. A 40-year entrepreneur in the travel business, an ex-DJ, and currently the head and the founder of Travelstart, an OTA based in South Africa. Is that I know I'm leaving out chapters of history here, Stephan. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of stuff that you left out, but it's true. I was a professional DJ for 10 years, and then also I issued my first airline ticket in 1982.
Wow.
To give you some idea, because I've been thinking about this. So in 1982, it cost a teacher or a person working in a bank 3 months' salary to go from Stockholm to New York on a normal price ticket. That year, Scandinavian Airlines, they had a campaign where it was 4,200 kroner, which was the equivalent of 1 month's salary. Now, if you should look at that today, a normal fare airline ticket to New York, a normal fare is about 1/3 of a 1 month salary. And obviously, a special price ticket to New York could be, about 20% of a salary to go to New York. So that's how much airfares have gone down over these last 40 years.
Wow.
And that's why so many people flying, and of course that's all going to change now.
I'm going to abuse a piece of data there, Stephan, if you don't mind. You've been at this a long time. You've seen different crises in the past. How does this compare? We hear it's terrible. Is it a 9/11? Is it 5 9/11s? Is it all of the SARS and MERS and everything else rolled into one? How bad is this, and how long will it take us to get back into spending 1/3 of a month's salary flying to New York?
I think the closest thing would probably be World War II.
Okay.
I of course wasn't around, and of course World War II lasted for a
few years. Yeah. Okay.
5 years. But no. This can't be compared to anything that we've ever seen in the past. So obviously, I've seen, massive recessions, in the 80s and what was it called? Black Monday, that whole event. And then obviously, the crash back in 92. Obviously the .com crash in the 90s, and then 9/11, SARS and what was it called, H1N1 or N2 or something like that, and everything in between. And so we had a board meeting in around 20th of February. And so we talked about, how bad can this get? And, news has just broke 2 days earlier that there were pockets of, outbreaks in Lombardy, Italy.
Yeah.
And I said, what? We don't know, because obviously when things started, in January, I thought, well, this would probably be a new SARS, probably be confined to China, Asia,
Confinement has been the story in the past. This is really the first worldwide gig we've had. There's always been something coming up in pockets.
Something there, and but that's about it. How naive was I? And then we have a board meeting, and then we hear about these pockets in Lombardy. And so, the board asked me, so what do you think? So I said, what? I think this has the potential to be, the Lehman crash, 9/11, SARS, and all of that, and it'll be worse. But never in my wildest imagination, could I imagine this, and of course nobody could. So, and the interesting thing is how much gradually worse it's gotten sort of every week. And now one of the things that we're really battling with is, how do we, as an OTA, earn our goodwill back? Because most of the goodwill that we've built over the years is, to some degree or another, lost because of the misinformation that we've given our customers, regarding refunds, and not being able to refund, and then, maybe we're going to be able to refund you.
Wow.
And it's just been like and it continues. Like, today we were, got new information again, which is terrible from the airlines. And obviously our customers, we see ourselves as our customers' advocates. So, and we want to work and fight for them, but we've sort of been doing it.
It's really exposed the travel industry business model. You pay for current operations with future bookings, and the main reason, or at least from what I've gathered, the main reason that the airlines are not refunding is that it'll completely, it'll obviously crash them today. They'll go bankrupt, but the future money is paying for today's operations. That
is also. That's not, that's also got a little bit to do with, how they spend the money. So in the case of some of the large, listed OTAs, it's because, they've been, the companies have been buying back their shares. So they've sort of been using
that's crazy. Yeah,
buying back their shares instead of, storing it for a rainy day. Obviously we're much smaller, so we're still in a different growth mode. So we use the money, we use the profits to grow. And of course, all that stuff, I think growth, we're going to look at growth very much differently. I think profits is going to be what's going to be most important going forward.
Margin. Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, we're all going to have to, everybody working in hospitality and travel is going to have to completely rethink what it is that they do. That is at least our take. We're completely going to have to rethink what it is that we're doing, what value proposition that we're giving, and I do think that I'm sure that quality is going to become important again.
I want to come back to the consumer story in a second, but rewind just for a moment to that moment in the boardroom wherein, it wasn't in your wildest dreams that it would be this big, even though you were saying, it's Lehman scale kind of problem coming in. Like, Travelstart is not a small company at this stage. You've grown this from something small, it's now something bigger. What's it like to be... What's leadership like at a time like this? How do you keep people centered? Because there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of anxiety. How do you keep a team focused at a time like this? They'll obviously be running around panicking, responding to everything, crisis today from airline, crisis, Y from credit card processor tomorrow. But how do you keep them focused? How do you keep everybody centered at a time like this?
It's a very big question that you can't answer with one sentence or two. I think I can only look at myself. I don't know what other people are doing. I think I have a little bit different leadership style. So, for instance, for the last 4 weeks, I don't consume hardly any media at all, because I think for me, some sort of sanity is very important. So I don't want to be affected by biased media, and I believe that it's very hard, close to impossible, to try to trust media anyway. So I think try to stay focused, and try to stay focused on what I in my heart believe, or what we as our team believe is going to be the future, and then sort of focusing on trying to rebuild, because we basically are going to have to rebuild the company from scratch, because we're basically on zero revenues now, just like everybody else, and then say, okay, what is the industry going to look like going forward? Where are the customer going to be? And then you sort of
are you thinking was not just
I'll just give you a practical example. So on March, when was that? March 4, I was in Berlin, having some meetings there. I think that was about the week when ITB was scheduled to happen, and didn't happen. And I wrote a letter saying, this is going to get really, really bad. We need to start to be a lot more frugal and focus on a few offensive and a few defensive, actions. 2 weeks later, only 2 weeks later, we had a new meeting where we set up a project we call Phoenix, because we said basically sales is probably going to go down to zero. So we're going to have to rebuild our company. So we basically chopped it up in sort of 3 pieces. One was a ramp down, was basically taking care of the customers that we have now. And then, a hibernation phase, which is basically when we rebuild the company, and then, a ramp up period, which is sort of like Q3, hopefully this year, when we can see sales coming back to some degree. And then, with a new type of much lighter organization, much more focused on automation, etc. So, and that's what we're sort of executing now. But then going back to the leadership thing, I think it's very, very important to stay sane and try to compartmentalize, because you can't deal with everything at the same time. I mean, we, just like all of our peers, we've had to let tons of people go, and that's heartbreaking. And it's people that you've sort of, some of them, I've worked with for 10 years, and some of them we worked very hard actually to hire, and now you have to let them go. So, but also that you have to sort of compartmentalize and try to keep your emotions out of it. But I cry, just like everybody else. It's
yep. There were a lot of sober conversations, I think. What are the I really want to press you on the Phoenix story, because it's not like somebody pressed pause, right? It's not like we're going to unpause and everything will roll back eventually to where it was. It's identifying new targets, new channels, new markets to grow from, right? It's not just waiting for the old tricks to work again. Is it really day one for you guys when it all starts?
No, I mean, it's not, of course, it's not day one, but I said to my team, we need to start to work. I mean, prior to this, we were 800 people in our organization. I'm not sure how many is going to be left when we get out of it, but I said we need to start to work as a startup again. So I put together a war cabinet, that consists of five people that is busy sort of building the new version of ourselves and that model. And so in a way, I would say, of course, you bring with you the experience and the wisdom and whatever you have, but I do believe everything is going to look different. Maybe not, at the end of this year, maybe not even next year, but as we go along, the industry will change. I think 50% of all the hotel rooms in the world, they'll be gone. What are they going to do with them? I think low cost airlines, my personal view, it's probably a thing of the past. Things are just going to be, much more controlled. That always has an effect on travel control, always has an effect on travel. So I remember, back in the 80s, France, for some reason or another, they decided to have visa regulations going to France. So basically, they lost 40% of all their tourists from Sweden, because now suddenly Swedes needed visa to go to France, and it was like one of those stupid decisions. And so restrictions always have an immediate effect on this. So if now people are going to have to carry health passports, et cetera, and being risk of having to take some vaccine to get into a country, that's going to have an effect on tourism.
It's not a pleasant picture to think of. We had Timothy O'Neill Dunn on a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about a whole extra, if you think about the airside, landside gap, that there'd be an extra layer on top of that for the health gap for all of the staff, that there'd be an extra perimeter, if you know what I mean, for crossing once you're tested. I know Emirates this week have a...
What he's saying is right, I think it's right, 50%.
There's this week Emirates have announced that they're putting everybody through a 10-minute test before they board. There's little packs that everybody gets before they get through check-in. It's kind of scary what will happen in order to get things restarted. On that though, do you think that Travelstart is now, do you see recovery coming domestically first? Just on that, are you focused at being a domestic brand now, or do you see it being, maybe the green shoots coming from business travel or from other segments like that? Do you see this local versus international divide playing a big part in strategy?
Look, South Africa always had a big local tourism because the rand was never much worth outside of South Africa, so they could get a lot of value for it within the country, and the country is so diverse. There's so much stuff to do here. And so domestic tourism was always huge, and I think that will continue to be big, and I think it might even get bigger because of this. So as for our brand, we always promoted both international and local travel. So for us, it's not much different, but I do agree with what everybody else is saying. Of course, it's going to start with domestic. There's going to be some business travel, but of course, working from home and Zoom and all that stuff is going to change business travel a lot as well. And then, lastly, or not lastly, then the international tourism, and lastly, luxury tourism of some sort.
Stephan, you've set up more than one business. You're very much an entrepreneur, a 40-year veteran entrepreneur. You're thinking of the future of Travelstart as a startup. We have a saying here, I don't know if it's common, but a recession is a great time to start a business. Everything is lean. You have more likelihood to find staff. I don't know if we're technically in recession, but everybody's predicting it. But anyway, is it a good time to start thinking about a new travel company or moving around the travel industry a different way with a new venture? Is it a good time to start?
Yeah, I think it's always it's always good to start in recessions because you start at a very low base, and people are very open-minded to change patterns and behaviors, and people think about how they can do things differently. So I would say it's an excellent time. However, starting a travel business, I don't know. Would I tell my kids, would tell my girls to start a travel business? Man, hey, don't. I wouldn't encourage them to do that. And if so, that would have to be a bloody good idea.
Do you think there are gaps, though, Stephan, naturally occurring gaps? From the signals you've seen so far, are there things that need to be fixed immediately?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's tons of stuff that needs to be fixed. First of all, travel in itself is a very unpleasant experience. It's a terrible experience. From when you get to the airport till you get to where you want to go. I mean, it's a shocking experience. And if you go back to even when I started in the early '80s, traveling was incredible. It was so exciting, and so I think that as I said before, quality. I believe and I hope that quality will become more important. I don't think a future where you have these 5, 6, 7, 8 large cruise ships coming into Venice every day, and all these fat people that just sort of flood the streets of St. Marcus Square and everywhere in Barcelona. I mean, that is not sustainable anyway. So that needs to change. And so I think that there is a golden opportunity to just do things with a little bit better, a little bit more grace. And then you can charge for that.
Are you thinking, Stephan, then, if we... and I should say I had Bill Gertz from AIFS on the podcast recently. He said that even in the 70s, people were saying that Venice would sink, that sustainability was a topic back then. There are things that keep coming up and up, but on the current definition of what we think of as sustainability, does it mean putting new destinations on the map? I mean, should we be getting the new wave of DMOs for what we would think of as tier 2, tier 3 type destinations to turn the outskirts of some town in Poland into the new Barcelona? Is that what we're talking about? Like, how are people going to let out steam? How are we going to discover the world? How are we going to experience new cultures?
That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that we live in a society and that is based on consumerism, and where we just consume. We consume everything from both food and clothes and experiences. We consume it like we're like freaking addicts. We just want to go from one thing to the next, and so therefore I just think that we need to chill the fuck down a little bit here and get real. And so I think that what we will start to do, I think we will start to travel more responsibly. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to, because it's going to be a lot more expensive. So I think airfares are going to be, from 50% and upwards to 200% more expensive. So people are just going to travel less. And so I think that, and that's going to, drive, I think, a different behavior. What do I mean by that? So instead of taking, 4 trips per year, we'll maybe do 1 trip per year or 2 trips per year or something like that. So we will travel a lot less, and we will actually invest a lot more in that experience. So instead of being, just, consumer driven, we will be maybe more conscious driven and more enjoy those trips a bit more than we did before.
Another entrepreneurial question, if you'll forgive it. We've had a lot of startups talk about how they're spending the downtime, and a lot of them seem to be focused on product. They're working on something new. They've got some new ideas. Their teams are getting through their technical debt, whatever way you're putting at it. They're making better stuff. What would be, for the ones that are surviving, for the ones that have had the tough conversations, for the ones that have had names on spreadsheets, for the ones that have had the accountants nearby, whether it's for the South African entrepreneur or for the international travel entrepreneur, what advice would you give them to best use their downtime before things pick up again? What's the best thing we could be doing right now?
No, I agree with what you said there. Fixing tech debt is very, very important. Look over your organization. Also look over, your business model. Is your customers even going to be around when you can come back? And there is worse thing in the world than saying, you know what, this might actually not be a future for us, going forward anyway. And so let's just rethink. Maybe we should pivot, as they call it today, and do things a little bit differently. It's not wrong to ask yourself those questions. And if you have to sort of pull out and do something new out of this, might actually be the reasonable thing to do.
It's interesting. Stephan, I'm going to ask you to join us at the end of the show just for a last word, but in the meantime, I'm absolutely dying to get Sharon Gilbert-Rivett to join us. We've had a flood of questions come in, and Sharon, I'm going to put them all to you because there's some absolutely dynamite questions for somebody that knows their way around marketing as well as you do. I better introduce you just very quickly. You've described yourself as head honcho at the Safari Collective. You're near Kruger, the safari capital of South Africa. How would I best summarize your career so far? You're a consultant today, but what led you there?
Oh, long story. I started out as a journalist, and about 30 years ago started sort of travel writing. I was still in the UK at the time. I moved to South Africa 28 years ago, moved back. It had been my childhood home, and working in mainstream media, newspapers, started writing travel again. And then for my sins decided that it might be fun to be a tour operator. So I did that for 7 years, and worked inside the industry as well as commentating on the industry. And I've always had a deep abiding love for the bush and the wilderness, which started when I was 3 and I lived in Kenya. So it was obvious that I was going to gravitate towards the safari industry, which has become my all-encompassing passion. And I now live, as you say, right next to Kruger in Hoedspruit, a very small tourism town in the Greater Kruger region and one of the country's biggest safari hubs. And I consult now mostly to the safari industry on all sorts of things from marketing, content creation, digital strategies to management, human resources, and even interior design. We've got an amazing crew of people working with me.
Now, I have so many questions to put to you, Sharon. I almost don't know where to start. I want to talk, if you don't mind, a little bit about the business models that are there around, whether it's locally there or in the major safari resorts. A lot of this is tour operator driven. Now, the tour operator will then pass funds down the chain a little bit to the sort of destination marketing companies. Maybe they'll then distribute some funds around the local service providers. But when somebody lands, goes on safari and leaves, the funds are flowing through quite a number of different actors there. What happens when somebody, stops the music and we all press pause? Are people being paid? Are people still able to pay their staff? Can you talk a little bit about how that money flows, if you don't mind, please? Just to get a sense.
Okay, well, I mean, the trickle-down effect has always been, quite good in the safari industry from a a supply chain point of view, but traditionally, and certainly what I've already seen in the 2 short years I've been here, you know, people fly into a safari destination, they get met by somebody, they get transferred to their safari lodge, and they spend that time in the safari lodge, and they come back and they fly out again to their next destination. So there's never been that much spend outside of a safari holiday in terms of what you can do, unless the safari company that you're with is taking you out to communities, is showing you, you know, what is on the periphery of the safari industry and actually depends on the safari industry for its livelihoods. The short answer to, you know, what's happened with COVID-19 is no, nobody's getting paid. We've all ground to a grinding halt, and it's been very quick. It's been very instant. I mean, our entire town is dependent on the safari industry, is dependent on tourism for the majority of its economy, and there's nothing happening. That's the same across the country, to be fair, but it's particularly difficult in a situation like here, where you've got rural communities that depend for their livelihoods on the work that they have in the safari lodges around here, and you've got the double-edged sword of conservation programs that depend on the tourism industry for their livelihoods, protecting the wilderness areas.
You work with a number of these organizations. You know, what's the mood like at the moment? Because I got the impression that the last person holding the cash keeps it, and you know, everybody was under a huge amount of financial pressure. Are there companies going under? And what's the mood like with the ones that are still there?
Yeah, there are companies going under, and there will doubtlessly be more companies going under. I think that the initial reaction to this has been fight or flight, you know, and a lot of people have just said, can't handle this, shutting the doors, that's it. There's no way that we can find our way through it. The majority of people that I work with and the people that I have contact with in the industry are trying to stay as positive as possible, but without knowing what the landscape is going to look like as soon as the doors reopen, and whether the doors are going to fully reopen or half open or, you know, be revolving, we have no idea at this stage. We're not able to plan, and we're not able to make promises, and we're not able to take bookings, to be honest. I mean, how can we take bookings when we don't know what carriers are going to look like in terms of airlift? We don't know what transfer operators are still going to be in operation. We don't know who we're going to be dealing with, or who's going to make it through this. So yeah, it's a very, very difficult time. And
Sharon, when do you think it'll kick back up again? I mean, you mentioned there that everything seems to be waiting. When
I don't know, the country is waiting for the president to speak to them tonight and find out what's happening with lockdown, which I'm sure is a question that everybody's wants answered. But what we have to understand is that, you know, even if he was to say we're going back to business on May the 4th, it's not going to be an instant return to normal, because normal doesn't exist anymore. We've got to adapt, and that's what I'm telling all of the businesses that I work with, is it's a question of adapt or die. We have to adapt. We have to understand that normal doesn't exist anymore, but we've got an incredible opportunity here. If we can be positive and think about this, we're standing on the cusp of a new world order, basically, and we've got the opportunity as an industry to reinvent ourselves. How often do we get that opportunity? We can look at what hasn't worked in the past. We can look at the things that we haven't liked, the way that the supply chains possibly, you know, unfairly favor the bigger companies. We can look at a more equitable spread of benefits. We can look at being more sustainable and ensuring that everybody involved in that chain benefits equally from it. We've got a huge opportunity here if we can just struggle along and think positively about it.
I'm going to press you a little bit on, you know, on the timeline, but let's just stick with the question actually the topic that you raised there. When it's time for reinvention, what do you mean by that? Does that mean like going out to new markets? Does that mean exploring new segments? Does that mean a whole new kind of Marcom for all of the destinations? Where are you going with that? Because I get it, but I don't know what that looks like yet.
The first thing that we've been doing, and certainly as this company, my company, and the people that I work with, we've been using this time for introspection. We've been looking at why we do this, and you know, are we doing this because we want to make money at it, or are we doing this because we're passionate about it and hey, we can make money at it too? And I think somewhere along the line, you know, a lot of us have gotten caught up with we've got to pay the bills, we've got to pay our staff, we keep going, but we've forgotten why we actually got into tourism. We're in the business of experiences, we're in the business of selling, and nobody knows travel, nobody knows this world like we do. So we've got a golden opportunity to share those experiences with people if we can gear ourselves up to it. But in terms of the practicalities of what we're faced with at the moment, it's very, very difficult to find a way through the short term. So
I wish we were having a conversation after the president's speech. I get the impression we'd have a little bit more.
Yeah, everybody's on the fence.
It's sporting events here get the similar kinds of coverage as our Prime Minister Taoiseach talking. Question from Bernard Lynch. He owns an LGBT website. How is South Africa geared for the first wave of LGBT in the recovery? He reckons that LGBT will be one of the first sectors to bounce back. Would you have any idea on that by any chance?
No, I certainly hope it does. I mean, South Africa is an excellent LGBT destination and always has been. We've got one of the most advanced, you know, societies in terms of the LGBT community. So I see no reason why the LGBT community can't take advantage of what we've got here.
Another question from Paul is, and it's something we've discussed on Travel Massive Live in the past, when it comes to messaging in a time of crisis, you know, when you're marketing, you know, when everybody is hurting, it seems like the message will get lost, that it's the wrong time to be putting out promotional messages. What do you message at a time like this? What communication do you put out? And how do you prepare for post-vacuum to take advantage of the growing appetite?
This is a very, very deep and multi-layered question. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. Now is not the time really to be selling. Now is the time to be sharing and sharing stories, sharing experiences, sharing inspirational things that will get the aspirational juices of the traveling public really flowing, so that when they are able to travel, you'll be first and foremost in their minds. I see a lot of people doing COVID specials. I mean, this is marketing suicide, to introduce anything under the COVID panel as special at this moment in time is just an absolute no-no. The most important thing is to keep your brand visible, and that's where social media and the digital platforms that we all use come into play. And the content is absolutely king at a moment in time like this. We've got to be putting the right content out. Words really matter, and the right words matter the most. You can't be saying the wrong thing at a time like this. You're going to lose people. And it's absolutely important that your social media, your website, every bit of content, every communication you have speaks to the same thing. And that's got to be your brand. You've got to understand your brand intimately. You've got to know who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and where you're taking it. So we're helping people put together brand strategies for the short term, the medium term, the long term.
How would you compare? So you've been a professional in the two markets, in the UK and in South Africa. How would you compare the local maturity towards building brands? How we would call it technology absorptive capacity. Like what is the maturity or the know-how around building brands locally compared to, for example, a European company?
I think there's a lot of know-how into how to build brands, but I don't think that many people really understand what a brand is. And a brand is not your logo in the corner of your letterhead. The brand is how people react to you, how people interact with you. It's every single place where you act with members of the public, your guests, your future guests, your stakeholders. Those are what is known as touch points. I'm not about to start a branding message, but if your touch points aren't right, and if the people that you work with in your business don't understand what those touch points are, you can't possibly get synergy across all of your platforms. You've got to speak consistently. You've got to be pragmatic in everything that you do, and everything has to speak to your brand. Who you are now is much more important than what you're selling.
I need to change topic because we're running very, very short on time. We'll probably run about 5 minutes over the hour. So thanks for holding on there. But there's one thing I have to ask you about. I would never. I won't sleep if I don't get this question out.
Is it about giraffes?
No.
Oh, damn.
It's got to be about sustainability. And look, I was a bit mean to Greta earlier on, but I need to know, like, what the actual hell are we talking about when we talk about sustainability? Is it queues? Is it restricting the numbers of people on safari? Is it stopping Venice from sinking? Can you tell me, please, what sustainability is, at least from your perspective? Because I'm struggling to understand it.
In terms of real sustainability is a mindset, and it's something that very much comes from inside you. It's a desire to make as many people as possible benefit from what you're doing, and as much as possible the environment, the planet. So it's benefiting people and planet. It's not a green thing, it's not a bunny hugging thing, it's a sensible business model to make sure that there's equitability in everything that you do. So if you're a safari lodge, do you want me to expand?
No, I'm stuck there, because from what I hear, sustainability means stop flying. You're saying it's more of a socialism kind of, not socialism, but a
sustainable tourism is about people. First and foremost, it has to be about people. Tourism has to be relevant, not just to the people who travel, but the people around it. So what you're selling, your business has got to be as beneficial to the man who mows your lawn and fixes your car when it breaks, your safari vehicle, as it is to the people who live in the villages around the reserve that you're operating in. It's got to be equally beneficial to everybody to make it relevant. And if it's not relevant, it's not going to be sustainable.
So you're saying that the money coming in to pay for but that is coming in as part of the tours, as part of the trips, whether it is, non-safari or safari tourism, that they would have, that the money would stay, that it would disperse better. Am I hearing that?
Yeah,
right?
that money can actually create microeconomies, and it is doing so. There are some absolutely fantastic proponents of the real sustainable tourism, and that's not a marketing buzzword. That's not something we do to make ourselves look good because we support a creche in such and such a community. This is something that actually makes your business work better. You unpack your business, you look at how you can improve it, you look at how you can actually operate so that everybody involved in your business benefits directly from it. And those people then take that money home, they're spending it in their communities. That's creating a microeconomy. It's encouraging people to actually become involved in tourism, and it's allowing people to understand the value of tourism. And especially important in my sphere is where tourism is supporting conservation areas and wilderness areas. It's helping people to understand that by protecting and conserving those areas, they're receiving benefit from it, which is helping with poaching, it's helping with...
Yeah. So is that not the case today? So what I want to do, because I know the producers are still listening to this. This is a topic for a whole show. I need something all about sustainability properly. But I just want to, because the theme is the view from Africa. Are you saying that right now that's not the case locally? That there is not, that the money that's coming in is not staying local? Specifically, it's coming in and it's going out to some NASDAQ listed company somewhere else in the world. Is that the feeling, at least, if not the reality?
Look, it's very difficult. In the sector that I work with, a lot of advances have been made in sustainable tourism, and there's a lot of really good destinations in this country that aren't involved in the safari industry that are outstanding proponents of sustainable tourism. But I don't want us to get bogged down in what's sustainable or not. What we're facing here in terms of the crisis is giving us an opportunity to look at how we do business and how we treat people in the business that we work in. It's giving us an opportunity to also look at how we work with each other. And there's a lot of controversy and a lot of disgruntlement in the tourism sphere at the moment over the supply chains that we have, where some people could be commanding 40-50% commission on certain things, and where you know, with all due respect to Stephan, where OTAs are driving this process of cutting the small product owners out of the market access because of this unfair advantage that they have. And I think we've got a golden opportunity here to start working together to correct these imbalances. And in doing so, we will already then have started creating a more sustainable approach to tourism in this country.
I'm really going to enjoy the show that we have on this one, Sharon, and I hope we'll have you back for it, because I'm getting the feeling that I'm just beginning the argument, and I regret not doing the entire show on it. I'll level with you. There's something there, though, that I do want to bring Stephan back in on before we wrap. And we might hang on for another few minutes, Sharon, for a couple of questions if you have time.
Yeah, sure.
But Stephan, before we stop broadcast and before we stop recording, at least for the live version of this, I wanted to ask you a question, and it's the same question I put to Kay Shabata last week on the last live show about the restart, the view from, again, the entrepreneurial perspective. I wanted to ask, do you agree with the approach from Phaka that this is about enabling the micro-entrepreneur? And do you have any other comment you want to share with Sharon about a reaction to the OTAs cutting out the little guy? I just wanted to get your last word on that from more from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Two big ones at the same time, but yes, micro entrepreneurs in tourism are always super important. And what we define that as, you know, it's a one-man company or a two-man company or a three-man company, small business, low tech or no tech. Yeah, I think that they are super important to create unique experiences. On Sharon's comment on sustainability, of course, like you said, this is a super long discussion. I think sustainability has become something important, has become a buzzword that consultants have made a lot of money out of. And but I think that will be somehow self-regulated now with prices coming up and less availability. So I think that we will see a lot more of that happen just organically.
Okay.
Other than that, what did you want me to say?
What I was hoping for was one last word to both of our participants, but the other participants, because we had a couple of startups on with Kay last week, and I know I put the question to you already, but one last word maybe on, you know, the like you said, the advice you give to an entrepreneur would be to maybe not look at travel. Is there another gaps? Let's leave it at this. Maybe Stephan, what's next for you? When Travelstart is getting back up and running again, you know, what happens? You know, what happens to Stephan? Are you still in crisis mode? Are you still into you know? Is it always going to be a startup, or are we just kind of going to weather the storm until the next crisis? Or how do we avoid the next one?
I think, you know, me personally, I think most entrepreneurs, they're wartime guys, and you know, we get motivated by crisis, and you know, we can be our best, you know, when it's war. And I think that I hope that I'm you know, that I've sort of gotten enough experience over the years to be able to use that, you know, for a situation like this. And so the priority now is just to sail the ship through this and come out, you know, as gracefully as possible, and hopefully with a better offering to our customer or whatever is left of them. And so that is, and then, you know, obviously, you know, we're looking at other things that we can do with the amount of people that we're having to lay off. You know, is there maybe a startup? Is there maybe another startup that we can do with some of the staff that we have to lay off? Or maybe it's 2 startups, maybe 3 startups. so we're working on a lot of those things, and I can't tell you too much about it because I don't like talking about what's going to come in the future when it comes to these things, because most of it is not going to materialize. Some is going to, and some is going to work, some is not going to work. So but I think the I always like to think that blessed are the flexible, because they will bend and not be broken. So you just need to be a bit flexible here, and roll with the punches and see what comes out on the other thing. The important thing I find is having is to keep your attitude sharp and be optimistic about the future, because if you look back, things have just sort of over time gotten better and better, and I'm sure it'll get better this time as well. And I think one final piece of word is, stay off social media, and you'll be much better.
It's always the whiteboard for me. You had me sold at, look, we're in that kind of war frame of mind anyway. We're fighting. If you're an entrepreneur, you're used to a good fight, and this is just a great battle, I think. And it's a lovely way to think of it, for me at least, at the end. Stephan, thank you for joining us. I know you're under time pressure to go, and we've run slightly over time. So if you have to dash, that's okay. If we see a blur of Stephan leaving the frame, that's quite all right. I do want to bring back in Sharon and Phaka just for another 3 minutes while we haven't run out of everybody's patience. Stephan, thank you for joining us. Phaka, can we get you back in frame again, and Sharon as well? I just want to get a little bit of banter going between the two of you, because one or two great questions have come in. Phaka, maybe, here's one, and I like this one. It comes from Anton in the chat here on the Zoom meeting. Does the kind of new non-safari but wilderness kind of things, the hiking, does that not scream post-COVID perfectly? Because we still want to get out, we want to get away, but we want to stay isolated a little bit. Does that fit the recovery at all? Is that something that we should be looking at maybe?
Absolutely. So for South Africa, Stephan also mentioned, there's just so much to do here. And so we absolutely are anticipating a pickup in adventure, outdoor, camping, hiking, yoga in the mountains, all those types of experiences we are anticipating will be coming back as soon as the country opens, really. For me, relaxing is running around doing something else, but still running around. The idea of just yoga in the mountains on a personal level. I'm going to be sending you photos of yoga in the mountains.
No, don't get me wrong. I bet it looks great. I bet it looks fantastic. I bet it can be framed beautifully, but I cannot think of something that would kill me. Anyway, but no, I think there's something there that, there's just going through the thematic list from IATA, like, you have to be able, if you're landing in Australia tomorrow morning, somehow, there's a lot of exceptions to get there. You're waiting 14 days somewhere. So your first 14 days in a destination, that could be a product.
Absolutely.
Why not camp in the mountains? We can still do, we'll have to, because we're isolating, still have to do the mountain yoga on Zoom. But, there's maybe a product there.
Oh, yeah, never mind landing in Australia tomorrow morning. I've been traveling this continent for the last 35, 40 years. I only went to the Northern Cape for the first time 3 years ago. What an amazing place.
I'm embarrassed to say, Sharon, that I haven't been. So the Northern Cape is on our list of places to visit as soon as the country opens, as soon as South Africa opens.
I was absolutely blown away by the Northern Cape. And there were parts of the Western Cape that I only discovered 3 years ago when I was filming a TV series for it. It's just incredible. This country is an absolute wealth when it comes to tourism. And exploring it should be the duty of every self-proud standing South African.
And what we're going to do for the rest of the world is we're going to put them online for you guys to enjoy as virtual tours.
To get it into the funnel as early as possible. Get them at the inspiration stage, absolutely. A quick one for you. What is can you tell us a little bit about what you think the right thing to do. You know, if you could have the president's ear before he speaks to the nation and hopefully gives you all a big Christmas present on the 5th of May, 4th of May, what would be your solution to getting the travel industry restarted as quickly as possible? What would brand South Africa look like, and what would you have to do to get that in place in order to get people coming as quickly as possible?
In my view, it's honestly just an alignment on strategy. We need an aligned strategy from the ministry all the way through the value chain, as Sharon has mentioned, just so that we all know what we're doing, when we're doing it. We're all speaking in the same voice, getting the domestic market ready for operation.
Is it a
do you want me to be brutally honest?
Do, please. I was going to say everybody needs to be tested, or you need better testing
Sharon,
technology. I don't know.
South African non-politically correctedness in check.
We are still broadcasting. Be careful.
I think as the tourism industry, we need a new minister.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you see, from an external point of view, I can't really relate to it. Is it that the decisions aren't happening fast enough? Is it that the structures aren't there? Or
now is not the time to be issuing edicts from on high and towing party lines. The time for party politics is over. During the Second World War, what helped my country of birth, the UK, arise from the ashes and face the invasion was a cooperative government, one that was totally apolitical. If we've got to survive this as an industry, we need an industry-led solution. And that means we need a minister who understands this industry intimately and can help to ratify policies that actually are workable with this industry.
Is that not the case? You know, I would have expected, you know, your at least to have attended a holiday camp once when he was a child. There's no sense of grassrootsness about your tourism minister. Is that a fair statement? He hasn't been part of the industry before.
I don't think an understanding of a portfolio is a pre-qualification for getting a portfolio.
Okay. All right.
Kevin, don't go down this path.
Better not. I've got a better one, and I'm dying to ask this. Look, I'm a geek, and I saw it come up in the feed, and I said, "Oh, that question's going in," and only for the point of view that I have to change the topic. Maria, you haven't put the name on it, but you'll whisper it in my ear and I'll know. Most of the travellers would have cancelled their trips so far. Has artificial intelligence played any role in customer support to solve the customer support problem for you guys? Have you seen where are you guys in terms of AI, machine learning, all that kind of sexy technology? Are we just really in the beginning?
We have chatbots.
Okay. All right.
Well done, Sharon. So when you talk AI, we are going to tell you about our amazing...
We haven't got primary intelligence, let alone artificial intelligence. Come on.
You're not allowed to bring it back up as ministerial intelligence either, but we had a good laugh on that one. I'm keen to wrap up on a positive note, and I really thought I was baiting it with what would you tell the president with it. What is the number one reason for somebody to what is the number one reason to visit South Africa? Number two, what do you think we can all do to help each other out a little bit more during the next hopefully month or two during this downturn? How can we help each other, and what's the number one thing about South Africa? And we'll call it a day.
I think the number one thing about South Africa is people. I've never been anywhere else in Africa where you have such incredible people who labour on in spite of the challenges presented to us from above.
They're persevering. So not giraffes, people. That's the first
We're not just persevering. I think we just have that never say die attitude, which I don't think you find anywhere else in Africa. We're pretty much. In an amazing... You're
ready for recovery from the sounds of things.
I think we're ready for recovery. We're certainly ready to be let out of our homes.
As Sharon was speaking now, Lorraine in the chat popped up with the best thing about what South Africa is the exchange rate. And I absolutely must emphasize this.
Well done,
For
Lorraine.
inbound travelers, if you're listening to this from anywhere else in the world, guys, come to South Africa for the exchange rate. You're going to have an amazing time for a fraction of what you would pay anywhere else in the world.
So the way we talk about it is how much is a unit, a pint of beer when you're buying it in Durban?
What's beer?
There we go. I
We
better
haven't been able
guys.
to have that for weeks.
Do you know?
I still want them to come. Don't tell them there's no beer.
Every week the food delivery man brings me some extra
beer.
alcohol. I'm kept alive that way. I'm
tell
really.
you what, we have some of the best gins in the world in this country.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I was kind of trying to relate it, like what is the cost of a drink in rand, so we could at least do the quick exchange rate on it.
Probably in the UK about 50p.
Well, there we go. That's if that doesn't fill a plane full of post-exam students from here, I think people are dying to get as far away from mommy and daddy as possible. Listen, I better wrap up there because you've been very generous with your time, and there's a lot of recovery to plan, and there's a lot of recovery to start building. So for the time being, Sharon, Gilbert-Rivett, we'll have you back on sustainability. I know it, and just if for no other reason to understand it from your perspective, it was absolutely mind-blowing for me today to hear that. So thank you for joining us. And Phaka, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and lovely meeting you, Phaka. We need to stay in touch, my sister.
Absolutely, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin, and thanks to Ian and Maria.
Brilliant. So you've been watching the live show. This is episode number 8, The View from South Africa. If you enjoyed this, please take a moment to share the recording with your friends. You'll find all of the details about that over on travelmassive.com. If you'd like to join us, or if you'd like to suggest a topic for one of our future shows, we've got a lot happening in production. Some great stuff is happening. Hit us up on live@travelmassive.com. And don't forget, of course, if you've found this through Facebook and you're not a member of Travel Massive, go on over to join our community. This is made possible by a fantastic network of about 57,000 people worldwide that all contribute to it. Thanks to Maria Stoyanova in Sofia for producing, Ian for support from Tasmania, and from a personal level, and I know he's already wandered on, but Neil Jansen was absolutely monumental in helping my basic understanding of the South African economy. So Neil, if you're still watching, thank you so much for helping me out with that. You are a superstar, helping me understand the economics and the marketing and everything else in the area. I know we'll have a lot of Guinness to share as a result of that. Thank you for joining us. This is the Travel Massive live show. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.